So, you've probably heard a lot of people talking about the new Node War changes, even if you're not really sure what they are. This week, the rest of the servers just got the patch for Node Wars that Korea received several months ago and did not respond very well to. But alas, the devs once again have said, F you, we're just gonna do this anyway. Although there is no news about the 200-man alliance system, which will probably roll out within a month like it did in Korea. These new changes include an entire rework of the node system, so now you're region locked and each region wars 3 days a week, you're stuck to those days. Balanos is only T1 easy, and Serendia is only T1 intermediate. There are no T1 hard caps anymore, and all the other regions are T2, 3, 4 distributed around. Comma is in the works. And perhaps the change that most people have taken offense to, all Node Wars are now 100-man caps. Keep watching, I'm going to walk through the entirety of the patch notes concerning Node War changes, and talk about how I think it's going to affect the scene. Granted, I only am really experienced with T1s, so I can only kind of guess, what might happen to the T2 plus scene. I'll include chapters so you can skip to specific things you want to hear about, and also please drop a comment with what your thoughts are about the new system, the new changes. There is a lot to cover. Okay, so their opening doesn't make it sound so bad. This time around, there are 2 major points for Node Wars. First, we added a strategic choice to participating in Node Wars that will enable various forms of tactics to be used. The next point is the increase in rewards for adventurers that are hungry for glory on the battlefield. Okay, that without seeing what the changes are itself, awesome, because there's not a ton of strategy in Node Wars at the moment, and especially for T1, besides the capped siege, there is no reason for people to show up to war other than they just enjoy it and they want to stay in the guild if there's guild wrecks. They continue, the rules of Node Wars were changed to be closer to a war game style, where bigger guilds with a lot of members can gradually expand out for bigger gains. However, this also means that smaller guilds with less members can find strategic openings to try and grab nodes as well. We are hoping this will somewhat reduce the imbalance in Node War between bigger guilds and smaller guilds. What? What are they thinking? This literally increases the imbalance. They are so counterintuitive. I can't speak about the T2 plus scene, but at least on T1s over the last 2 months, the T1 scene has been dying horribly. And it's so dead that actually guilds that have historically underperformed, underrepresented with participants, are holding up to several nodes a week just because it is so easy to go and snipe on 40s and 55s. All the guilds that could even maybe pull 40 or 55 have resorted back to placing 25s just in order to get a fight. So now these guilds that have repeatedly been not performing well, not bringing enough people, have to fight everyone in order to get a node. And many of those guilds were only casual node warring guilds, maybe once, twice a week. There is no such thing as a casual node war guild anymore. It's done. It's done. You can't do it. You cannot be a casual node war guild. If you happen to win, if you do not show up to one of those 3 days a week, that's it. You're done. Your node's gone. Start over, reclaim your territory, regain a main node. You're done. You're finished. Guilds can no longer place once a week and take it casually. You have to place all 3 days to be a even marginally successful node war guild. And you need to be bringing as best of attendance as you can, preferably 40% or higher, because if you're only bringing 15 people to a 25, you can't do that anymore. That's not gonna work. They continue, the maximum number of participants for each node war was removed as the entire territory is part of the node war. That goes back to the you must be bringing good attendance. You must be recruiting for node wars and coming regularly. You cannot casually war anymore at all. And the patch goes on, Not to mention, the rewards for successfully occupying a node have increased not only by the increase in taxes collectible, but also by the addition of rare items that can be purchased from the Node War shop NPCs. No shit, of course the taxes are going up per node because they literally halved the amount of nodes available. The rewards in the shop also vary by tier, so if you are a T1, like me, you are drawing the short stick. I'm sorry, they don't really care about us. And get this one. Additionally, the rewards for Masters of Guilds that are victorious in both Node War and Conquest War were significantly improved. This was to reward the guild masters that keep working hard for their guilds and to give them loot that matches their supremacy as a guildmaster of a guild that has gloriously risen victorious on the battlefield. Guys, literally, what the fuck is with this change? So I'll get into it, but first of all, T1 guildmasters do not get the rewards that T2 Plus does. Also, who cares? I don't want special rewards for me. I want special rewards for the guild. I want an incentive to keep my people coming to war when it is so absolutely crucial to be pulling maximum attendance. And what is up with the last line of this? Matches their supremacy as a guild master of a guild that has gloriously risen victorious on the battlefield. We are not Mel Gibson in Braveheart. It's a video game. It's a video game. If we didn't want to GM, we would be fucking gone. Like, that's it. Out of here. And if you're GM, just because you want some special rewards like that, or you want the special fucking border, what are you doing? Granted, it's a half guild fund cost to swap guild masters, so I don't think this is gonna necessarily be abused, but they are also giving things to advisors, which can be swapped back and forth. I think that's going to get abused a little bit more. And finally, they wrap up the intro by saying, this is quite a big change for Node Wars, and may come across as a bit daunting due to being so different from before. No shit, Sherlock, you just changed the entire war system for all 4 tiers and Siege with a day's notice. We didn't even know this patch was actually gonna roll out, or when it was gonna roll out, because Korea hated it and it received very limited modification from the original concept. Of course it's daunting. You are about to kill a ton of guilds and really finally finish off the PvP Node War scene in the game, which, in my opinion, is one of the best and only endgame content. But guys, hey, it's cool. It's all fine. Because guess what? We're getting Kama Sylvia! As long as you're not a T1 guild. Okay, so now let's get into the nit and grit of what this actual new system will look like. Change to a territorial expansion method of warfare. Node Wars will now be held by territory depending on the day. A guild will now be able to participate on an initial node. Once they occupy the initial node, they can decide to expand their dominion to neighboring nodes. Now this is something that varied from the initial concept that they had released. Originally, they were going to have starting nodes, so there were only going to be like 2, 3, 4 starting nodes per region, and you were going to have to duke it out on these starting nodes and able to progress. Now, plan with your buds so you can dodge them, because you are dropping whatever nodes you want and then going from there. Not sure how it'll play out yet, but I think this initial drop and take is probably going to be the easiest because you are focusing, especially if you're bringing 30, 40 plus, you are focusing all your forces on one node. It's when everyone else starts to expand and you have multiple guilds hitting your node, or when you try to expand to hit multiple nodes at once, that I think we're going to start to see a lot of crazy fights happen. They give us a pretty good hypothetical also. They say, Guild A that occupied Northern Plain of Serendia node, Guild B occupied Alejandro farm, build forts on Costa farm node to invade, and Costa farms between those 2 zones. Then, both Guild A and B can damage the fort and annexes of Guild C that is currently occupying Costa Farm. However, Guild C that is occupying Costa Farm cannot invade and damage the forts and annexes in the Northern Plain of Serendia, nor the Alejandro Farm node if they have no forts currently built in those nodes. Yeah, so pretty much fuck you. You're stuck turtling, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't even go kill their cannons or their Ellie. You are stuck fucking taking it. You are just gonna have to take whatever comes at you, unless you have a fort. So pretty much get ready for building to be a process now, because just if you want to play it safe and you have the funds, you're gonna want to build on every adjacent node and just do whatever you will with your forces, but have that fort just in case, because if you have to go attack someone before they get to you, like, you're done once that fort's out. You can't attack anything. You better just stalemate it. Okay, so the changes continue. Changed all relevant territories of a Node War server to PvP zones. Additionally, non-participants of the Node War can still be attacked by participants, however, this rule does not apply to safe zones, which is same as before. Okay, doesn't seem like much has changed there. Occupying guilds that defend their forts in their occupied nodes for the duration of the 2-hour Node War will win. So there's no such thing as like an actual stalemate anymore, which is good. If you have to turtle, you know, and you go the 2 full hours and you just stick that shit out, you keep it. A guild can occupy up to 10 nodes in a territory. That is excessive. I don't think any guild is actually gonna hit 10 nodes, maybe like Cho or Reli or like some of those top siege guilds, but I don't think like T1 anyone is gonna have 10 nodes. I don't really think anyone T2 plus is gonna have 10 nodes. Guilds can only expand 1 node at a time, regardless of whether or not they already occupy a node. So I don't think you can actually pop down forts then on like all adjacent nodes, because if you can only expand 1, you're gonna have to pick and choose which other node you drop down on. And it's probably better just to fucking roll with it and drop something. And even if you don't necessarily push offensively to have it, then it's there in case you need it. So, like before, guilds that occupy a tier 1 to 4 node can participate in the conquest war of that territory. So it sounds like they're bringing Balanos Serendia Siege back? Guild that occupies node in a territory cannot participate in node war of another territory. Okay, we knew that we'd be region locked, you know, it kinda sucks. Like, you're not gonna have any variation in where you're placing really, especially if you're in like Balanos. There is not gonna be any variation in the node warring environment in Balanos. At least Serendia, you know, there's different environments, different terrains, but you're region locked now. And changing regions is gonna be super inconvenient because just like logistically as a guild, how are you supposed to up and tell 100 people, maybe in the future 200 people, okay, like these were our 3 war days and now we're switching. These are gonna be our 3 war days. What if those don't work out and you have to revert? It's just like a lot of big logistical changes and organizational structure issues. So it's best to just pick a region and roll with it depending on your tier and what days that your guild has been pulling best. If you die and resurrect during Node War, then you will be resurrected at the fort that is closest to the node you died in. What? Like, what does this mean exactly? Are you fighting anyone in the entire region? Or is it just a really messy wording of, okay, so if you have a fort in zone A and B, and zone A is the main fort, but you die in zone B, you go to the B fort? Or is it like, if you have a fort in zone A, can you attack people even in zone C if it's not adjacent to you? And if you can, and you have a fort in, let's say, zone B, also, you get sent to the B fort if you're in region C. Like, how is this gonna work? That whole line just seems like PA's classic, really poor wording, and on top of it, poor wording without giving us enough information to really tell like what the hell is going on. But regardless, if you have a messy push, if you are scattered, then too bad, because half your guys are now, instead of being able to go fort, town, or outpost, half your guys are gonna be at one fort and half your guys are gonna be at the other fort. Like, how do you regroup now? So good luck if you're having an off day and you're not performing very well, or if you're just a classic underperformer and you're not grouping well, because your entire ball now is scattered. Changed it to make so war heroes cannot be hired for node wars. What? The Merc system was literally the best part that PA came up with of this whole thing. You want to give us 100-man node wars, but you don't want to let us have mercs? What? Especially, for example, like T1s. Balanos is gonna be Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Styrandia is gonna be Sunday, Tuesday, Friday. So if you have people who want a war 6 days a week, sorry, they can't. Like, you can't merc anymore. That's not a thing in this new system. What I'm really disappointed with about the No War Heroes change is originally when they came out with the system, they were gonna let you take in mercs for T1s, which you have never been able to do. And I mean, yeah, they added caps, really bad caps to T1 especially, since they came out with that system, but they were gonna have it where it was gear capped by Merc instead of participant capped. So like, instead of a static 5 Mercs, I don't know the exact gear score total they were working with, but you could have, say, like 2 giga fucking geared Mercs. It was all planned to be like a certain total of gear score rather than a static number of mercs you could take in. Next up, add the main node function for guilds occupying nodes. Occupied nodes are decided at the end of Node War. Guilds that have 2 or more nodes can designate a main node. For guilds that have 2 or more nodes but do not designate a main node, their fort in the newest occupied node will be designated automatically as their main node. If a guild that got to occupy their first node decides to expand and take another node, but fails to defend their first node, then they will lose all their nodes. Yeah, this is why I don't think anyone is going to have 10 nodes. Okay, so let's talk about one of the leading guilds on the NA server, Chow Nation. They have notoriously amazing attendance, amazing coordination, amazing skill level from all their players. If Cho, let's say, has 10 nodes, and they have 10 guys, let's say they're pulling 100, and they have 10 guys stationed at each node, what the hell are 10 of them supposed to do if a ball of 80 people rolls up? Granted, strategically, I think Cho would not be leaving only 10 people at their main node, and they would be playing that a lot better. But just for an example of someone who can actually really truly pull the numbers they need. So now, what about all these guilds that are barely pulling 20 people, if that, or maybe have never pulled 20 people, or they're just warring casually? Like, at that point, all you can really do is just turtle, assuming that you've won a node and you're trying to defend, because how are you going to send 15 people now to play offensively, leave 5 people on defense, and risk getting hit by 200 people potentially? Granted, I don't think it's gonna be that extreme, but now every war is gonna be like a mini siege. So GG if you have an off day and you don't pull or you don't perform well, and or you just go up against someone who's a way tougher matchup and you lose your main node. Back to square one. Doesn't matter how great you do. Maybe on those nodes you're trying to push out adjacently on, you're doing amazing. Maybe you're wiping complete blue feeds, but the wrong ball just rolled up to your main node and now it's wiped. The main node can be designated freely by the guildmaster and guild officers outside of the Node War period. It cannot be changed during Node War. So, like, if you have an officer who disagrees with what you guys designated as the main node, can they then go and change that themselves? That seems like a very bad function to give officers. I mean, look what happened to Snapchat that one siege where one guy just starts kicking people. I mean, it happens. It is nice though that you can change it outside of wartime. They make it sound like you can kind of do it whenever. Maybe there's a cooldown on it, so like you don't have to think about it all the time right there on the spot. Added a new function where the location of where the guild skill assemble will summon guild members to can be chosen if a guild has 2 or more forts installed. The person using the skill can see a list of forts for the skill to summon members to. For guilds that only occupy one node, the guild skill assemble will work the same way as before. It will summon members to their fort. When the main node is destroyed, all forts built by that guild and all their nodes will be destroyed and liberates them. For guilds that occupy 3 nodes or more, if the nodes get disconnected from the main node, they will lose the disconnected nodes, which will then be liberated. So is assemble like battle command to gather, or is it something entirely new with a similar functionality? This also isn't on the guild skill tree, so like I don't really know what it is, if it's going to be like Spirit of Battle where there's a separate bar for it, but then that's also, you know, in our skill tree. It sounds like Assemble is gonna be a defensive action and not like Battle CTG where you can use it offensively or defensively. Yep, sucks if your main node is destroyed, just start over the next day you war, and then if you have nodes that get disconnected, I mean that makes sense, it's like a game of Risk. It gets disconnected, you lose those nodes. Added a max limit to the number of annexes that can be built in a node during node war. Like before, guilds will have a max limit on how many annexes they can build in each node. Occupying guilds can only build up to 6 cannon observatories in the node they occupy. You can summon siege weapons in a node and bring them into a different node to fight. No big deal, guys. Just 6 cannon observatories. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Imagine T1. All the cannon observatories are in another node. They're all shooting at you. And because you don't have a fort on that node, good luck. They're just gonna keep shredding your fort. Doesn't matter what your repair time is, because 6 cannons on you, that's 1 cannon like every 5 to 8 seconds. So I am gonna go tomorrow and test out on a T1, you know, what exactly the annex limit looks like, but it sounds like it's gonna be per node, and like the limit has been extended. And if the limit has been extended per node and not per region, are we gonna start to see like mini siege bases? Because like, I mean, for T1 specifically, like you can build such a condensed fort that you can place in a lot of weird spots. So now are the spots going to change because we need more space to build? Like, how is this gonna look exactly? I don't think it's gonna be bad. I think it's gonna be interesting. Change the appearance of the node war information on the world map. Okay, that's a given. The current node occupation information will be shown with changed icons and node colors. A random color will be assigned for each guild that occupies a node. When a guild expands and occupies a neighboring node, the nodes will be filled with the same color. Okay, not bad. It's like actually kind of looking like a board game of Risk. You know, this helps kind of keep it clean, see who owns what, see who's near you and what. The node will be highlighted when selected and show you where you can build forts in the node. The borderlines between different territories and nodes occupied by different guilds will be marked with a thick yellow line. The borderlines between each node will be marked with a dark gray line. Change the node war information on the world map window to no longer display the tax grade for T1 advanced nodes. And in a classic PA not giving us enough information, they don't exactly explain the map of Calpheon. They put I have to assume that those color numbers are the amount of forts built on each node? Maybe? You can use a filter to see the nodes that your guild currently occupies, nodes by their tiers, and nodes by the node war day. Okay, cool, that's not really like a big change or anything. Added the UI where you can see the guild's fort condition during the node war. You'll be able to see the condition of the forts during node war and click on the flag icon to auto-navigate to that location. So, is this just our forts? Is this everyone's fort? Are we gonna get something like Conquest Wars, where you can see the stats on everyone? I don't know, it's hard to tell from this little bit of information. Changed Node Wars to be held on days designated for their territory. Each territory will have Node Wars 3 times a week. And so all the territories will have different days, but every single region will war Sunday. And like, that's not a horrible change because, you know, any real self-respecting Node War guild is already warring 3 times a week, main days. So the day changes I'm personally conflicted about because, not looking at the region lock, just the days, you know, like we've been doing 7 days a week on weeks where there's been siege, you know, 3 main days, 3 snipe days, and siege. It's a lot to plan, it's a lot to organize, even if you're just doing snipes half those days and it's supposed to be chill. But now with these changes, and especially when the 200-man alliance rolls out, those 3 days are going to have a lot more planning, a lot more logistics, there's going to be a lot more organizational structuring that needs to be done. So while I will enjoy my off days and, you know, I'll try to make some more videos, I think those 3 days a week we are warring, and then if we do siege, I think everyone who is like really getting nitty-gritty about this is gonna have a lot of work on their plate. Guilds that already pull like 40, 50 plus and have phenomenal mid-war organization, pre-war organization will do fine. It's guilds that have been making changes, you know, aren't quite there, they're still in the process of improving. That's gonna be difficult. But for new guilds that don't node war, that want to experience it, there's like no way pretty much now to get into node wars. It's just not gonna happen. They made it really tough. And forget about your scheduled fights, your 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s to kind of see, you know, what your progress is and how you're stacking up against everyone. There's no such thing as planned fights anymore because it's so risk style. And they literally halved the nodes. We went from 108 nodes total across all tiers to only 63. And they took away T1 hards, which honestly was the one thing keeping a lot of people on T1s. A change that I would love to see is when they release Kama, make one of the regions T2 only and give it Medea siege caps. Being a T1 guild, like with a fair amount of gear, and then going to those capped sieges was amazing. The damage was fucking awesome and it was such a good time sieging. And then every Sunday when we come back to the T1 caps, it's like, ah yeah, this sucks. You can't one combo anyone. Balanos is only gonna have 7 nodes, all beginner T1. Serendia is gonna have 13 nodes, all intermediate. Calpheon is gonna have 15 nodes. Medea is gonna have 13, and Valencia will have 15. Taxes are a little weird, but not bad. Change the amount of taxes received for each of the node tiers to the following. Additionally, the accumulated taxes in all the nodes and territories were increased 49%. Therefore, taxes will accumulate according to the changed rates for each of the nodes after maintenance, and you collect taxes twice. That 49% though, I mean, it makes sense, they have the nodes, so we're getting a 49% increase across the board, but that's still huge. And now, even though you can't snipe and you're warring 3 days a week, they're incentivizing you to keep your node, to keep at least one main node. Now with the new changes, getting a win is gonna be like getting double of what you were getting before, but you have to be able to pull off the win. So imagine these guilds that have a little monopoly going, how much money they're gonna be raking in. I mean, this is not a bad change at all because they're finally making it viable, especially for T1 guilds that don't really get to do payouts like the big boys. They're making it realistic for normalized payouts and larger payouts as long as you are winning, especially if you're winning multiple nodes a week. The collect the taxes twice thing is kind of confusing, so I don't think it's gonna be like support funds where you have to manually collect it. But is it gonna be automated like it is now? Like it just, at that time, at those 2 designated times, it says when you can collect your taxes, it just gives it to you? How is that gonna work? Changed Resplendent Medals of Honor to now be issued once based on the highest tier of node conquered by your guild and the result of the node war victory. So I think this is to balance it so you don't have 5 nodes you just won and you're getting medals for all of them. I think it's going to be a set amount of medals just based on what tier and what the highest tier specifically was. This little diagram makes the liberation make a bit more sense. So victory, easy. You pulled off the win. Your fort stayed up. Liberation, I think, is you knock someone out, but you don't necessarily take that node. And loss, you know, sorry, your fort got wiped. A huge positive change that they're adding to help incentivize people actually coming to war is gonna be the new guild shops. If your guild wins a node, you get till the next day to use the NPC shop in Calpheon, Medea, Valencia, Kama, Dregan, and Odie. Sorry, Greenleafs, you guys can't use the shop. And depending on what tier of node you own, and you can buy from the highest tier, there's different items and they totally vary. Honestly, so the rewards for T2, 3, 4 aren't horrible, but the rewards really could have been better. Like the best they're giving us are RNG boxes with a gold bar box possibility, and then you know, that's RNG, Caphras stone boxes, and Marnie unstable fuel. Except they are really once again giving T1s the short stick here. Like PA is literally trying so hard to kill T1s and then they do not want to give the T1 Node War attendees the means to progress up to T2 plus gear. Bitch, we can't even buy a Caphras box. A Caphras box. Like, come on, just let the T1s buy a fucking Caphras stone box times 10 or something. You can't even get Caphras bundles out of the RNG boxes for T1. Really, like, the best you're getting is that gold bar box, and if you're lucky enough, one of the immortal perfumes or droughts. And honestly, like, even the T4 glorious box of spoils, the RNG box, like, it just doesn't have a lot of good stuff. I mean, these guys are like 700 gear score. What are 5 Marnie's unstable fuel gonna help them with? You know, their tags are so expensive. From the bottom of T1 all the way to the top siege guilds, I highly doubt there is anyone super excited for these rewards. I mean, like, really, one of the best things you can get are juices. You can get 10 of each juices, no matter what your tier is, for only 100,000 silver each, and that's like really the only thing you can't get elsewhere. If I, at a 273 Kudum, walk into Castle Runes and sneeze on a mob, I am going to get a massive pure magic. So why is anybody going to pay 2 mil silver for 1 massive pure magic? Just put your workers on the nodes. Just grind. Like, they increased the drop rate so much. Why is that even an option? They could be giving us stuff that is so much better. NPC shop was an amazing idea. Like, it was actually really a good idea because we know PA doesn't always have those. And then they just really dropped the ball. And honestly, The kicker is they added new crystals. They added a new set of crystals. You can get special evasion and increased max HP. Only if you are T3 or 4 is what it appears like. I mean, like, T1 and 2, you know, they did give us some crystals, but like, T1, when they cap accuracy, what is a crystal that gives me increased accuracy or extra AP against humans, which is also capped, gonna do? What are we gonna do with those? And finally, what I think is probably one of the most BM changes they gave us, greatly increased the benefits granted to a guildmaster who has achieved victory in a node war. If you are a T2 plus GM and you guys won, congrats, because now you can get a pen black star for 7 days. Like I said earlier, they are literally trying to kill the T1 scene and then not give T1 players the means at which to catch up to Siege gear. And they drop all these new catch-up events like the pen accessory and now the full pen gear event, plus season in Kaposha, just so all these new players, you know, will maybe keep playing the game and hopefully swipe mom's credit card. But they don't want to invest anything into the veteran players. I mean, like, these pen black star equivalents, like, are crazy. But when you're 700 and something gear score, literally, what are you gonna do with it? They're handing out now to the people who are winning past end game actually, gear, and they're not giving content to follow it up. If you could have this set and they actually gave you something fucking cool to do that's totally different, what are you gonna do? Grind orcs again for your 500th hour? Awesome. Maybe you'll make an extra 2 grand loot. Honestly, this temp set is so BM on 2 fronts. First of all, I mean, look at how much stuff they're jipping T1s out of. And T2, you know, gets more of it by a lot, but compared to T3, T4, you know, they're still missing out on some stuff. But it's also like a slap in the face, I think, and maybe I'm wrong. If you're like 700 gear score and you disagree, tell me I'm wrong. But it's like a slap in the face to the people who've been grinding for years to be where they are. Because congrats, you have grinded your life away. You're now 700 to 720 gear score, but because of your hard work, your GM just got a free pen black star and can get the whole set if you guys keep winning, is what it looks like. So you better hope you have a cool GM who is willing to use this for the good of the guild, because the guild is what got them this temp piece. Honestly, I can imagine there being a lot of infighting about this one. Plus, it's not super clear what a lord is, but it's not just guildmasters, it's guildmasters and lords. So is that advisor? Is that officer? Is that something new entirely? Is it from an alliance? Is it within your guild? And there's like some more details about a couple items where you can craft one of the pieces, but I don't know, that whole system's kind of weird and there's not great wording on it. But honestly, like, I don't think any of us know what is about to happen with Node Wars, how it's gonna look, how it's gonna differ between T1s, T2 plus, if one scene is gonna die, if all the scenes are gonna die, if we're getting Balanos, Serendia Siege. Like, at this point, I mean, these changes are so big, there is literally just no way to know how exactly they're gonna affect the game for us. But I think we can kind of all agree we're upset to some degree. I mean, there's a lot of changes, there's a lot of big changes. I don't think it's necessarily like bad changes. It's not a bad system. Like, the risk style system is honestly kind of cool, but what sucks about it is the way they jumped it on us. Now we're region locked, the 100-man caps. I mean, really, like, everyone was struggling to bring numbers before, and now we have to pull 100? What the hell? Like what I can tell you for sure, people are panicking. People are sliding in my DMs, you know, asking about merges, alliances, what I think about these changes. Like, people are panicking, and really, like, that's the one thing that is gonna kill guilds right now. I think a lot of guilds are going to die, retire. We might not see it this week, we might not see it next week, but I think within a month, 2 months, and it'll be even different when the 200 man changes come. It's just gonna be so different for us. Thanks for listening to my really long explanation of the patch notes and how they're going to change things and maybe what effects they'll have. Let me know in the comments what you guys think is going to happen, because I would just love to hear your input on this. This is like a huge topic of interest for me, so I just want to hear what you guys all have to say.